Coming to you live from the San Francisco Bay Area. It's time for Zig in the Zone with Ralph Zig Tycho.
I am back. You are comfortably zoned with me in the zone. Zig in the Zone. How cool is that? And especially because I've got a buddy who is our newest sponsor. And I'd like to introduce the world to Andrew Doza, a return guest, a sports fan, a baseball fan, and the best attorney in Alameda, and now in Washington. So how's that for an intro?
Well, that's a start. Next time I want to be the best attorney in Alameda and Oakland. So we'll just take one city at a time. How's that?
Well, that goes to the best attorney. How about that? In California. Tell me about Washington. You've got joint residency and or at least joint license with Washington. How did that come about? And are you excited beyond the fact that you're with your hon from a business standpoint? Has it been an advantage yet?
Well, I don't think so. The easy answer is that I officially moved to Tacoma in September of 2023. Realistically, I'm in California 95% of the time, so I live there, have a residence here. Most of my practice is here. The vast majority of my business is here, but it made sense to get licensed there. So I'm just adding a client or two at a time, primarily focusing on estate planning up there. But if there's some good litigation that comes my way, I'd contemplate doing it. The answer is it is an adventure learning the laws of a new state. I'll say that before I got my license, I did not have to take the bar exam. They just did a background check. We fooled them completely, so we're all good to go on that measure. And they did want me to get a spot view of the laws in Washington, and the most challenging was what to do with Indian law and the sovereignty of Indian nations as they resided in their domains on the reservations in Washington. And if anyone's ever been to Washington, look at a map. There are dozens and dozens of names reflecting the significant presence of indigenous people there, and so it is an honored part of their law to honor and regard those people with the sovereignty they have in their nations.
Well, as an example, Yakima. I visited Yakima on my Tops baseball trip many times, and that is a strong Indian or Native American name. And what do you like about Washington, and what do you miss about Alameda when you're there?
Well, I will say,
notwithstanding your honey again.
Yeah, well, the easy answer is the best thing about Washington is my fiance. She lives in Tacoma. It's a great story. Maybe another time we'll fill in the details, but the short and sweet answer is, Ralph, there was a significant event in my life in 1968. One is that I met Deborah at the time. We were both 10. And in 1968, I realized I was a Baltimore Orioles fan. So how good is that for a combo? I do love Washington, and having her there is really the main reason. But it's a beautiful place. 3 months of the year are crazy and cold, but the rest of the time, it's really pretty beautiful. What I miss most is that I still really know Alameda. So if I'm driving somewhere, I don't have to think whether I'm driving left or right to get out of my driveway and then get there most expeditiously. But the way I learned my way around Tacoma is I went on a trip and got lost twice. And when I figured out why I got lost and how I got lost and how I got home, suddenly the city began to take some form for me, and I began to figure out where things were relative to each other. So it's beginning to feel a little bit more like home.
Good. I'm glad you're adjusting. Pauly, step in a second.
Yes, sir.
I'd like you to play the version. It's not quite ready.
It's not the final. It's not the final.
we did a good job on it, or you did a great job on it. We mispronounced, the AI mispronounced Doja, but that notwithstanding, take a look, Paulie.
All right, here we go, folks.
Whether it's criminal defense, estate planning, or civil litigation, the answer is the law offices of Andrew Dosa. Call us today at 1-510-241-4165 or find us on the web at dosalaw.com.
We are lawyered up at Comfortably Zoned, Zig in the Zone. Jeff Canberra, who you have a little bit on too, is a co-sponsor of this wonderful podcast. It's really turning out great. And Jeff specializes in rental tenant disagreement. And that's something Andrew from the start didn't want any part of. It's an art in itself. And Jeff does it well. Play his bit for us, if you would.
It, Ziggy. Here you go.
For tenant and landlord disputes, there's no other than the law office of Jeff Canberra. Call now 1-510-865-7369, and don't forget to tell them Zig sent you.
Right. Now, tell them Zig sent you to Andrew, but he'll know, because his first question is, how did you get our name? And we are so proud, Paul and I, of being able to take care of our Alameda friends by giving them the best legal service around. It's a small town. And like you say, Andrew, you're the best in Oakland too. You had an experience in Oakland that comes to mind. We talked about this the last time. Who did you represent? Which controversial person did you represent? And what did that teach you about life and law?
Well, the first thing I want to clarify is I didn't say I was the best attorney in Oakland. I don't know that I'll ever actually tell anybody that I'm the best attorney anywhere. The best I can do is the best in the moment. But let's talk about, I've had a couple interesting cases in Oakland. I'll tell you about one related to baseball, and we can get maybe back to the other one. The other one was a gentleman named Yusuf Bey, who's no longer with us. He was involved with the Black Muslim Bakery and the Black Muslim community in Oakland. That was a long stretch ago. But the other case I want to tell you about is the gentleman who was at a game on a Saturday afternoon at the Coliseum. They were playing the Tampa Bay Rays, Devil Rays at the time. And he was with a bunch of his friends, had too much to drink, tried to jump over a railing, slipped, fell, landed on his backside. He had a cell phone in his pocket, and he knew he broke his phone. He got so angry, he just kind of picked it up, turned around, and threw it, and did not know that he was heaving it in the direction of the field, and he hit the right fielder from the Tampa Bay Devil Rays in the shoulder, and he got arrested for assault with a deadly weapon.
Wow. Well,
yeah.
How did you meet him? How did you come to meet him?
Well, I can't remember what the answer to that question is. All I know is when he came to me, we worked our way through what we wanted to accomplish, and at the time, there had been one or two events where another fan had attacked another baseball player who was in a bullpen running along the side rather than one of the bullpens behind the center field wall. And the player, I think, grabbed a bat and kind of went after the fan. And then there was another incident. So Major League Baseball was really concerned about the safety of its players, which is reasonable. Although, look, 3 incidents involving baseball players doesn't mean that in the next 50 years we're going to have any more really serious incidents. But it's always possible because, humans are foolish. Anyway, long story short, with my guy who was who did me a favor of having a responsible job and was a good kid. Really, he was a 23 or 24-year-old guy. Had a really responsible job at a hospital. Was good. We ended up biding our time until Major League Baseball didn't feel that strongly about it, and then we worked out where he could avoid jail time by doing stuff on the weekends. So it was a pretty good result. We got it down from a felony to a simple battery, and it resolved. It worked out. It worked out nicely. But it was funny. I got contacted by a media outlet in Australia wanting to find out what was up with us crazy Americans being aggressive toward baseball players. So that was kind of fun. That was kind of fun.
Hey, look, let's continue our baseball talk. What impresses me about the last few months of your baseball fandom is that you got to visit Sacramento, where the Oakland A's were either it was a last resort, while Vegas is in limbo, and I don't think the shovel is in the ground yet on Vegas, but we could talk about that. They're playing in Sacramento minor league AAA ball club or AAA stadium. How does it feel from a fan standpoint going to see a game there?
Well, so I think, Ralph, you and I have been to maybe 4 or 5 different minor league games together and a couple major league games. I don't think we made it to Sacramento, but I had seen the Rivercats. I had seen the Rivercats a few years ago, so I knew it was a really lovely, cozy stadium. It's got that minor league vibe because you can sit out in some areas of the outfield and along the right field pole foul line. And it's a stadium with a capacity of about 14,000. So it's a Friday night. My Orioles are in town. Not a big draw. And the Athletics could not fill that stadium on a Friday night. Now, the next night they did fireworks. I didn't hear what the capacity was, but imagine that you are a major league team and you can't get 14,000 people to fill a stadium. It's just it's a sad thing. I think the Athletics deliberately were inattentive to their fans and the desires of those who wanted to remain faithful in the last 2 or 3 years. And then, of course, the final insult was they raised prices last year, and the relatively small people that came paid a slightly larger amount, and the lots of people that didn't show had another reason not to show. So it's kind of a sad way for that team to creep out of town. I will say that I believe that there was a ceremonial groundbreaking with shovels in the dirt by the official political dignitaries in Las Vegas. I think that's happened in the last couple weeks. Where they are officially on the stadium, I don't know. The plan, I think, is within 4 years they should be starting their season. So that, I think we could do the math, gets us to 2029. Is that the year? I don't know for sure. Don't take
it gets me to age 81, and I'm just worried, will I know what the A's are at age 81? But I'm trusting that the Biden-Trump dilemma of not handling mental old age real well will not become a problem with me, because I don't handle middle age mental stuff very well. There will be no adjustment. But I'm not the president.
Ralph, wasn't it your commitment to not become middle-aged, so you just skipped it over and then pretended that you weren't even an old person?
Believe me, it's working. I'm an old guy. What George Carlin says, I'm an old fuck. That's how he described it. And I'm pretty much the same thing. But there are advantages besides the disadvantage of seeing friends, relatives pass away at a much more consistent basis than before. And I've had to learn that when I think of these people, think of their goodness, what I've gotten, the enjoyable way I've known these people, as opposed to constantly be thinking, my God, how are we going to live without them? We've had them, and our memories are what we treasured the most, and not easy. Mortality sucks, and adjusting to it is never easy.
There was a comedian, Ralph. It wasn't who you mentioned a few moments ago, but this comedian said, "Oh my God, have you been looking at the statistics on death? It's like everybody's doing it."
Everybody's doing it. It's the new craze.
Or or the old joke about everybody's dying in alphabetical order. He reads the obituary. Amazed by that.
Well, and I'm a stand-up comedian, Ralph. I love dying. I do it twice a night, an early show and a late show. And so this is what I live to die for. So there you go.
There are comedians, and Pauly is one of them, that it's just as good if you have a hit, or if you do die, because you're saying what you want to say, and it's cathartic in that sense, and that if you could die with the material, whatever it is, brings a smile to your face, I'm sure. Am I right?
Well, I think it's funny that some of the things to describe what we do is we kill, we slay, knock them dead. One of George Carlin, you were just talking about George Carlin. One of George Carlin's last specials, he did amongst tombstones. The stage was basically a graveyard with all these different tombstones, and so yeah, like I said, knock them dead, slay, kill them. All those things. They're all kind of, there's so many little euphemisms and terms. Somebody said to me, usually blue's not a good term. Term is blue. When you say something's blue, like someone's blue, they're dead, they're dying, they're gasping for air. We like to leave them gasping for air. I like to do a little bit of everything. I like to not only make you laugh, but make you think and cry and gasp. And a good gasp for me in the right place. I have the best seat. I got the best seat in the whole room. I get to watch you guys react to this crazy shit I'm saying on stage. And so, yeah, it's an addiction. I feel like every time I get on stage, it should probably start it with, "Hi, my name is Paul. I'm a comedian. And it's been, 5 days since my last set of comedy, and I feel like it's an AA meeting all over again." So,
well, you can always start with this line, Paul. You say, "Hi, I'm a comedian. And I hope that in the next 20 minutes I prove it."
Right. Yeah. I say, and if it's okay because comedy is subjective. If you don't laugh, I'm just a public speaker. And so that's kind of usually, that's one of my little giveaways. Yes, I'm an advocate too. As you can tell, I'm not doing any comedy today. I want you guys to relax yourself. So, yeah.
Well, you know how a good comedian relaxes and I did comedy for years in the 80s and 90s. They tell themselves over and over that whether I do well on the set or whether I don't do well on the set, somebody is paying me to tell jokes. Can you imagine the mindset of the average comedian who, even if he's been paid once, let alone repeated times, got him fooled? They pay me, and it's not hard work. There's no heavy labor involved, but it's certainly a work that keeps you busy thinking. So, is Andrew there? Have we lost him?
No, I'm still here. I was just contemplating that there have been times when I've represented some jokes too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I didn't say tell jokes. I said represented them. But then the question is, I don't know. Thank you, Paul. You're the one who's awake in my audience.
Yeah, there you go. I'm glad.
Yeah.
For some reason,
let me flash back to my first year of law school. I was in contracts class, which was the worst class that I'd ever taken in my life. And I was involved in a discussion. The way law school worked was the professor would say, all right, the case of such and such, which was part of what we had to review. He said, what were the facts of the case? Someone would cite the facts, and he said, well, what was the argument that prevailed? And then the professor would turn to somebody on the seating chart and say, all right, so Mr. Doja, what do you think of that argument, and how would you have argued against it? And there was one occasion where I made this passionate argument. I wasn't really sure I knew what I was talking about. And when I was done, there was dead silence in the class. And someone in the back of the room raised his hand and says, you can make that argument? And here's the line for you. My law school professor said, you can make every argument in court as long as you can keep a straight face. If you can keep a straight face, you can make that argument. So there you have it.
Yeah, no, and there's a lot of times where they're willing to buy. By the way, for some reason your camera froze. I'm just glad we still have your mic.
Yeah,
but it's I like it because I can deliver a line and people will be like, even after I get off stage, they were like, was that bullshit? And in the beginning, when I used to, at first, it was like 99% of my joke was fabricated, 1% truth. Now it's the other way.
Yeah.
It's like 99% real, 1% fabricated. And it's funny because people go, oh, it's the punchline or whatever came out. No, that was the true part. and so it's funny how comedy comes out of each and every one of us, even in dark times, even in times of being anxious or stressed. It's a coping mechanism. It's how cavemen used to deal with it before getting eaten by a woolly mammoth. They were probably like, oh, I'm too old for this shit. And then,
there's no coincidence that there's a high preponderance of comedians that come from the Jewish faith or non-faith, but the Jewish culture. And what it is, and I've tried to tell people that it's a way of dealing with our tragedy.
Right.
Whatever it is, sometimes it's appropriate, sometimes it's not. But the words come out to make people, put people at ease sometimes.
It makes life palatable when life isn't always palatable. It isn't always something you can take. Sometimes you need that spoonful of sugar to make this shit go down, especially if anybody's been watching the news over the last 4 months. I mean, literally, that's what it's about. You have to. So if we're not going to talk politics, but if we were talking politics, you would want to keep the conversation going, right? You wouldn't want to be two people talking with no one listening. You want to have a conversation where you both listen to each other and understand and have, we use this word a lot, empathy. Have empathy for one another. And you got to understand where each one's coming from. And it's so to do that, you have to be open-minded. And sometimes it's about diffusing the situation. There's so many times where I didn't run from getting into a fight. I actually would joke my way out of it or do something that would flip and turn the tables, and no longer am I about to fight this individual. We're now buddies. We're now friends. Friend of mine, Patrick Carlin, we were just talking about George Carlin. Patrick Carlin, my friend for many years, would tell me when you would go somewhere new if it was a new school, new neighborhood, whatever it was, you always seem to find your crowd, or your crowd always seems to find you. You guys always seem to gravitate. It's like, and it didn't matter where you were on the food chain of, let's say, kids at that time. You know, if you were the cream of the crop, you rose to the top or whatever. But there was always kids that just kind of seemed to gravitate towards each other. And so I think that's a coping mechanism. Like I said, cavemen about ready to get eaten were probably joking halfway down. And so it's always been that.
Hey, let's change the subject because I wanted to ask Andrew to about your dad. I found him, never met him, heard a lot about him through you. I found him to be, remember the old Reader's Digest, the most interesting character, or, you know, they'd have someone, I don't remember exactly how it was worded. He was absolutely among the most interesting people that I heard about. And I know you'll agree just by the way you're nodding your head. So I'm going to simplify the question. What do you most pass on to your children that you got from your dad?
There's an easy answer for that, and the answer is the idea of honor. So my father, with all of the amazing, probably the most talented man I've ever met. And he was a polymath, just gifted in several areas. I won't get any particulars. I don't think it's terribly important. But he had a pretty brutal life. He'd made his way through the brutality of his childhood. Born in Transylvania, his father was a brutal man. My father ended up getting a scholarship and was shipped out of the country, 3 countries away to Austria, and went to for 12 years lived out of his home at this boarding school in Vienna, and then he served in World War II and made it to the U.S. Army, served in Korea and in Vietnam, and had experiences of such terrible things. And he was an angry man who was sorting out how he managed himself, and he didn't really know particularly well. And we had a few conversations, and I chose to love him and be with him and be in a relationship with him, knowing that he still had limitations, but he carried himself with his sense of honor, even when he was he was struggling, when he was difficult to deal with. This idea of what was the honorable thing for him to do. He committed himself to doing what he had to do. He got a commission in the Army before he got married. He felt like he couldn't provide until he got that commission. He was 40 years old at the time that I was born, 38 when he got married. And so the idea of honor was just really powerful to me, and it continues to dominate how I think, probably more than any other particular quality other than fairness or justice. And one time my son and daughter kind of chatted with me. My son was senior in high school. My daughter was middle school, just about to get to high school. And they both said, "What's this big deal about honor?" And I said, "It's because if you don't have a code of honor, if you don't have a sense of ethics and how you are to carry yourself and your responsibilities as a human, 1 to yourself, 2 to your family, and 3 to your children and the world, you aren't going to be aiming in the right direction. You aren't going to be getting there." And my son has sent a compliment to me about 3 weeks ago. I was asking him a question. He responded by how he dealt with things, and I said, "That's really great. I'm glad to see you're doing that, and you're trying to teach Sawyer that." That's his son. And the answer was, he said, "A lot of the great qualities I have, I learned from you." And it occurred to me, while I was honored by that, this is not self-congratulatory. I learned from my father what it meant to carry myself with that sense of honor. Now, a lot of it, how I approached things, was different than how my father did. But the idea that I had to have that foundation, that's the answer to your question. It was honor that my father taught me, my mother too, and I pass it on to both my kids. And my son exemplifies it as he's contemplating raising his son, who's 8 now.
I'm sorry, Zig. Go ahead. I cut you off. I thought we lost you for a second.
Uh-oh.
You're there. You're there.
Okay, I just wanted to tell Andrew, I didn't know the words, what they would be, but the tone exactly describes you best. And anybody who wants to know Andrew Doza, please play this over and over again, and then call Andrew, because get to know him before you need an attorney. Tell him what may happen, what to be prepared for when the time comes. Because there's always a time in life when one can benefit from legal counsel. Now, the problem is when you need it most, you're pressured, and it's difficult to communicate when you're pressured. So I would advise meeting Andrew well in advance of whatever is or isn't going to happen. Get to know him on the phone, have him expecting your call when and if. Does that make sense, Andrew?
Well, sure. Thanks. I appreciate the compliment and the encouragement. I will just tell you, if you haven't picked it up, I love to talk, but my plan when I talk is to try and find a connection with people and find something that will be relevant to their life, or is obviously relevant because they mentioned it. And then my goal is to if I can.
Now, is it good? Like,
I'll share with you at some point a little point.
I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. I was just gonna say that I'm writing a book on wisdom, and really what I found to be significant, it was this idea of honor. What's good is finding connections between behavior of people that did well and behavior of people that did not do well, and connections between how you start something and how you finish it. If you start in the wrong direction, the best you can do is take the time to get back on track, but you've wasted all that time. The person that took 5 steps forward instead of 5 steps sideways will be 10 steps ahead of you when you get back to the start. And so how do I live wisely? How do other people live wisely? And if I chat with people, I'm hoping that I'll say something that gives them some insight or some clarity about what is wise. The book of Proverbs is about fools and the wise. The best advice is this: when you see a mother bear robbed of her cubs, it's better to be hanging out with her when she's all outraged than to be hanging out and be a companion of fools. If that's not a great visual for you, I'll draw you a picture.
Right. Pauly, anything you'd like to ask Andrew? Because I've known him for years, and it's easy to talk to him.
Well, the one thing I was going to ask right off the bat was kind of like just kind of follow up what Ralph was just talking about. It's probably not a great way to choose a lawyer when you're under duress, but of course that's when people call you, right, Andrew? So it's like there's something already happening. There's not usually calling you just to see what kind of guy you are, and maybe I might need you in the future. I'm trying to make a decision when I'm not stressed and under duress and got all these things going on in my life. Do people still retain lawyers? Is that a thing that they do with you, or in your kind of type of law?
Well, it's not that common. Usually someone would retain me because they anticipate or expect or are aware that there is a situation that's already begun. So for instance, for criminal behavior, who's going to come hanging out with me? If they came hanging out with me, they'd never have the criminal behavior if they followed my advice, which is to consider being wise and stay away from a problem. I tell people, by the way, make good decisions. If you haven't learned how to make good decisions, pick good friends, because good friends aren't going to be thinking, I'm bored, it's Friday night, let's go boost to 7-Eleven. But for estate planning, it certainly makes sense to meet with me, because, if you're not ready to make the decisions right now, we can still get you started on the things that you want to do, the steps you want to take, or the plans you want to put in place, and then they can come back and see me afterwards. So that would certainly